Just give me the dollar amount. What is it?
All right, we'll call to order the SL4B Corporation on Wednesday, June 19th, 2024. Any public comments for today?
We have no one signed up.
We'll close the public comments. So we'll do the consideration and action of the minutes of May 15th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, no comments. Board member Lane approved. Sewell approved, Lane second, so all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Approved. All right, so we're gonna do start with a workshop today. So is it Shayla? Am I pronouncing?
Yes.
Yes, great. She's gonna lead us off today. Thank you.
All right.
Read the item. Okay, so we'll have a review and discussion of the 2024 City Manager Strategic Plan. Thanks, Shayla.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm here to kind of talk you guys through different things that we're working on this year as a part of our 2024 City Manager Strategic Plan. So again, my name is Shayla Lee, and I'm a part of the Strategic and Government Affairs Department. So I like to throw a little background information. You guys know this, but just kind of setting the foundation about why we're even putting together this work plan, why we're even embarking on these initiatives. So you guys know that Sugar Land is home to over 100,000 residents. Our latest citizen satisfaction survey showed that 95% of our residents enjoy living in Sugar Land, and 10% of them said that nothing will make their lives even better. But we recognize that on top of that success, we want to continue to be a place where people still want to come live, thrive, work in. And so with that, we're focusing on what different initiatives that we can embark on to make sure we're continuously ambitious, innovative, forward thinking. And so our 2024 strategic plan is a compilation of those different efforts that we're working on this year to make sure we're being that forward thinking organization and city. And so I'll go through the different parts. There's kind of different elements of the strategic plan, and I'll walk you through each one of those. So the first element is the strategic outcome areas. And so those are 8 focus areas that our city council has set forth to reflect community priorities and different initiatives and focus areas that they want us to make sure we're keeping in mind every single time we embark on a different initiative or project. We make sure it ties back to these 8 focus areas. And I always like to throw out, it's 1 through 8. They're all equally important to us, but we just have to number them. So I'll go through each one of those for you guys. Okay, so the first one talks about finance strong and viable. So we recognize that a lot of the initiatives and things that we embark on is utilizing taxpayer dollars. So we want to make sure that we're always fiscally responsible. So we make sure that every single initiative we have, we understand the risk, we understand and make sure it's adaptable, making sure that we're innovative, we're practicing efficiency, and just making sure we're being good stewards of our taxpayer dollars is one of our first focus areas. The second one being community safe and secure. So we pride ourselves in being a community that is safe, that people can walk down the street and feel safe and comfortable in the environment that they're in. And so with that, we invest in different technologies. We invest in making sure our public safety has the equipment, the training, the tools, the security, the IT infrastructure that they need to be successful. So that is one of our second focus areas. Number 3, economy, thriving, and vibrant. So we recognize that Sugar Land is home to so many local business owners. We're so innovative. And so we're constantly trying to find opportunities that we can embrace that entrepreneurial spirit, and also figuring out opportunities for us to collaborate on the nonprofit side as well. So making sure that we're having continuous opportunities for partnerships in the community. Number 4, culture, dynamic and fun. And so not only do we want to make sure we're good stewards, we're providing excellent services, but we want to make sure that people have fun when they come here. And so that means that our investment in our different performance venue spaces, the different sports and recreation opportunities that we have, different celebrations, restaurants, all of these things, making sure that that is another thing that's at the forefront, making sure we're in an area where people enjoy coming here, both visitors and residents alike. Number 5, government respected and influential. So this kind of takes the frame of how we are with our regional partners, with our partners at the state and the federal levels, because we recognize that we can't do a lot of things alone. And so making sure we find those opportunities to be able to collaborate and have those relationships, and making sure we're focusing on the people over the politics, and always making sure we're finding some opportunities to show our best practices for local government. Our sixth focus area is focused on transportation, connected and convenient. So we recognize that we take different innovative approaches when it comes to mobility and how do we move people to different places and through the future. And as we embark on different redevelopment initiatives, how are we focusing on that balance with the mobility efforts as well? And then also finding opportunities to engage the community to understand different things that are going to impact them on the mobility side of things as well. Number 7, infrastructure, sustainable and resilient. So that was about, we recognize that we need to focus on long-term planning efforts, because we're not just planning for today, we're planning for tomorrow, and the maintenance of the different infrastructure opportunities that come along. And also looking for opportunities to partner with the community or different entities, and being able to be sustainable in that aspect as well. And then the last focus area, so this one is about people, welcome and engage. So we talked about culture, we want to have fun, but we want to make sure when people go to these places, they also feel included, and that we create these opportunities to have this open dialogue, and making sure that we have different diverse opinions, because we recognize that all of us together are stronger. And so making sure we create those opportunities as well. So those are kind of those focus areas, those goalposts, that every single initiative that we embark on as a city are always connected back to these 8 areas. And so next, I wanted to kind of introduce you guys to the City of Sugar Land's vision and values, because we recognize as we go along this path to achieve these different areas, we have to be grounded in our guiding principles and what makes us our core values. And so with that, a lot of you may have seen it. It's been in different verbiage. It's trying to ingrain in all the presentations that we try to do. But our city's vision is that we are trailblazers, relentless in our pursuit of good, so that our employees, residents, and businesses can enjoy a life better than they can even imagine. And so that is something that we take pride in. We make sure we are adaptable. We make sure so we always ask the question of one another, is it trailblazing enough? Are we pushing the lever enough? And so that is the organization's vision. And then kind of how do you carry that out? And we carry that out through what we call Blaze. So those are our organizational values. So that's focused on, how are we bold? Are we challenging each other enough? Are we making reasonable risk? Are we stepping outside the box? The next one being loyal. So we recognize that we want to be loyal to our community. We want to be loyal to one another. We want to be able to provide the utmost best services. And so figuring out different ways where we can foster that collaboration and that cohesive environment. Third one being adaptable. We recognize the world that we live in today is not going to be the same world 6 months from now, and trying to find opportunities where we can embrace that flexibility and that resiliency that it takes to make our community successful. And then the fourth one being zealous. And so we are committed to excellence in all endeavors. And so that focuses on our commitment to continuously strive to give the best absolute services possible that we can. And then the last one, empowered. So we recognize that the community can't perform in the way that they can. Our employees can't perform in the way that they can unless they have the resources, the support, the education possible. And so making sure that we get the right information to the right people to be able to be successful. So those are our vision and values that kind of are grounded in every single thing that we do. Every single initiative and things that are brought forth to you are always guided by those different principles. And so I always like to throw this in here too, because when you see the word trailblazing, people's like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean you're going to go have moving cars down the street for everything? For us, trailblazing could be like this crazy out of the box idea, but trailblazing is also about creating those efficiencies on your day-to-day work. It's about finding opportunities to take risks, sometimes failing, and being okay to try again and learning from those lessons. And so just kind of to go over what it looks like in action. So we talked about the goalposts, we talked about those focus areas, and then we talk about the vision and values that help us on the pathway. And now, what do you focus your efforts in for that year? How do you put that work into action? And so for us, we call those all-in initiatives. So those are what our employees, what our resources are all in towards helping support throughout the year. And so for that, it's taken the form of these 4 all-in initiatives. And so the first one you guys are super familiar with. So that's a different work that Devin and Jessica and their team work on a daily basis about the different initiatives and projects that can help us reinvest in our community. The second one is about being data-driven in decision-making. And so for that one, we recognize that you probably work for organizations, you've seen other cities, everybody has a lot of data. But how are we making sure that we invest that data into the decisions that we need to be making to be successful for our community? And so with that, I've included a QR code, but also it takes you to data.sugarlandtx.gov. And so what that is an open data portal where we have invited the community to be able to search all different kind of data sets that make our community successful. You want to learn about maybe how many open records requests do we get to see in a year? A lot of these things exist on this website, and here's kind of just a display of what it looks like. And that's part of our commitment to not only being data driven, but to also provide the opportunity for the community to explore data too, because we never know what can come out of it if we're all kind of putting our brains together and thinking forward. And then the third one, prioritizing future capital investments. So if anybody had a chance to tune into our city council meeting yesterday, actually, it was a great opportunity for us to talk about. We're at the point now where our city has had 3 different general bond elections, and now we're finishing up those projects and trying to figure out what should our community invest in, what should be important projects, what infrastructure might be important. And so just figuring out what other future capital investments we could explore in the future. And then the last one is focused on, that one is kind of focused more on our employees and kind of the culture that we're providing, because we're recognizing that if we expect our employees to be able to provide the best service possible, then we have to invest in them. And so that's different initiatives that we're doing to like pay parental leave that we have and different holidays and different things that we're embarking on in that sense. Okay, and then a summary of just again, how it all fits together. You have the strategic outcome areas. Those are the different goalposts. Those are the different focus areas that we have. And then you have the vision and values, that path in which we achieve to get there. The all in initiatives where we focus our efforts, and then performance are the different metrics and the different things that we track on the initiatives to make sure we're holding ourselves accountable for it. And so with that, I will open it up for questions. Yes, ma'am.
All good, like seeing. What I didn't see was, and it may be because it's county or state, but I didn't see anything related to education. Nothing about connecting with the schools, nothing with whether it's high school or below or colleges or anything like, I didn't see any of that in that presentation at all. And I would think that would also be something that we should connect with.
Absolutely. And I think, and you're right, not necessarily in the presentation, but as we take the form of exploring different initiatives, whether that's through redevelopment or what investments we're taking on, we do bring those partners to the table and figure out how we can have those conversations and make sure we're all benefiting. But you're absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah.
had a lot of other things. That was just one for me that stood out as not being addressed at all.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Well, I will say that we've added 2 members to the legislative task force, a representative from Lamar CISD and one from Fort Bend. So they're going to be included in discussions with regards to the priorities of the city and what we are going to, present with the help of TML to, what our legislative agenda is. So we are bringing them into that task force.
Yeah, it was just in their 8 strategic
Yeah.
areas, there was nothing about it.
We're working towards it, including our ISDs and some of our, decision-making processes in our vision in the city.
And I'll also add, as we embark on like revamping for 2025, that's definitely considerations that we can make as well. Absolutely.
Mine's more of a comment than a question. That was one of the best presentations that I've heard in 4 years. You seem confident of every detail in that presentation, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. I've had a lot of practice.
Question for you on the vision and the.
So I'll say this vision and values is something we've embarked on over the last 2 years. So we're definitely trying to revamp to make sure all of our services are in alignment with it, but I can agree. So but it is fairly new as well.
I always, in any organization, if you want to foster all those 8 goals that you have, if you don't get that consistent and right, and people are comfortable where they are and can express it, and everyone understands what the other people are expressing is within that system, you're a lot more productive.
Absolutely.
And it takes time. You can't switch it every year
Yeah.
and change out.
And that's where we're at right now. Like we've embarked on it over the last 2 years, but making sure it's ingrained when you bring on new employees and making sure we continue to progress on it. All right, well, thank you all.
Thank you. Well done.
So good afternoon, everyone. So just kind of piggybacking off Shayla, she talked about the all-in initiative of commercial and residential reinvestment. And so when that was announced as an all-in initiative, we had departments working on those things, right? We have economic development, we have engineer, we have planning, but there wasn't a set group of people that were really focused on what does this mean for our community and how do we take this forward? And so with that, that's when our new department was created, and it was a blend of economic developers and long-range planners. And so I'm one of the assistant directors of the department, but I have a counterpart, Ruth Lomer, that y'all have not yet met most likely. So I just wanted to introduce her. She's gonna get this kicked off and then we're gonna do this together. Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. As she said, I'm Ruth Lomer, one of the assistant directors. I'm over the long range planning group and community planning and redevelopment. And so why are we talking about redevelopment in Sugar Land? A lot of people, I think, still think of Sugar Land as this booming, thriving, growing city. And when you go other places and you talk to people, they're like, aren't you still growing? The reality is things are changing for us. Our economy, just like every other economy, is based on this economic development impact cycle, which you guys, I'm sure, have seen and are familiar with. But here in Sugar Land, it started with a lot of primary jobs back in our day when we were a company town, right? It started with Imperial Sugar, and that created that demand for housing, which then created the demand for services, for retail, which then provides the funds to invest in public services and quality of life. And as you increase those, then you drive more demand for those primary jobs. And so you just have that cycle kind of going through over and over again. But what we have seen is that we are in this life cycle. We recognize that we've gone from this small town to through this time of very rapid growth. And then we kind of hit our peak in most recent years. And we recognize that we're really at this point where we have to decide, are we going to redevelop, reinvest, and in some ways reinvent ourselves, or are we going to kind of stay as we are? And really what that means is decline, because as we all know, change is the only thing that's constant, right? Change in death and taxes, I think, are the only things that are across the board. And so as a city, we've decided we want to follow that path of redevelopment. We want to be proactive, and we want to continue to see ourselves thrive in the future. How do we know we're at that point? We've been watching a lot of different indicators. So we've seen our population kind of increase and then start to stagnate over time. We've also been watching the people who live here and what their demographic makeup is. So our median age has continued to increase over time. So it's great because people moved here in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and they stayed here. And that's great because we love having longtime residents. But what that means is we don't have younger families moving in because a lot of those people are still staying in the places where they moved into 30 years ago. We also have a lot of our housing, about 90% of our housing is single family, detached single family, but only 34% of our households actually have children in them. So think about that for a second. That's a pretty big disparity. This is another kind of metric that we've been watching change a lot over time, where we have a significant decline in housing development. In 2022, we had a total of 8 new single-family homes in the city of Sugar Land. Again, not a number that most people will think about being associated with Sugar Land, but that's the fact. And the reason for that is we don't have much vacant land left. So the dark orange shows you where the vacant land still exists in the city. It's about 4% of our land. It actually might be even a little bit less than that today. So back in 2007, actually, when I started with the city, we were at about 15% of our land was vacant. And now we're down to 4%. So we can't keep going out because there's nowhere else for us to go out. So we have to think about going up. We have to think about where are the areas of our city that we can better utilize the land in the way that it's being used today. And so that really takes us to that conversation of redevelopment. And so again, that's really why our department, the Community Planning and Redevelopment Department, was created. And we as a department came up with this mission statement that we are here to advocate for and support the development and redevelopment that will sustain strong community services and a thriving quality of life. And so we're really combining that economic development and long range planning to look at what are the decisions we're making today as a community? And what does that mean for us? What is the impact for us in the long term in the future? And so here's some pretty pictures of our team. Most of us are here in the room. You have Devin as our director, you know her well, and then Jesse and several of his team, I think, present to you guys pretty frequently, but also have a team on my side of the house. Kareem is here with us. And then we've got a vacant position that we're actively recruiting for. So with that, I'm gonna hand it back to Jesse.
Okay, so like any department, we want goals and metrics, right? Like, how do we know that what we're doing is actually working? And where can we see what maybe isn't working and we can pivot, because we will need to pivot. Our community is ever changing and we need to see what's gonna work. So first and foremost, our goal is to make sure that we are making the best use of our remaining land that we have left. And so every time we say it a lot, when you make a land use decision, it's a financial decision. And so we're always asking, what is the highest and best use? And when we look around our community, it's assessing our needs. One thing we talk about a lot is, instead of parking lots, like what would be more beneficial? We have areas in our community that there's 30 acres of parking. That's creating no value at all. And so we're trying to find those areas of opportunity and what we could do with those to help generate value. And even if it's not value, what could be added that would enhance the quality of life for our residents? Like I saw this statement that said turning parking lots to parks, like something that is more valuable than just a parking lot. We always want to be maintaining a balanced mix of land uses, you know, residential, commercial, industrial, they all have a place, and we need to find that balance in what works. We want to renovate and redevelop commercial to new commercial and other uses. So we definitely are not going to, you know, focus on solely building the new, the shiny, while we have large development areas that we can focus on, like Imperial and Lake Point. We have shopping centers and areas in our city that they have to be redeveloped and reinvested in. And so what can we do to encourage that investment? That's a big focus of what we're talking about. And then transform Sugar Land's infrastructure to encourage that private investment and create those walkable places. Again, infrastructure, Shayla talked about, and mobility, like how are people moving around our community? We have an older demographic. Is it easy for people to get around our community, walking, biking? And so we're thinking about all of those things. How do we make it more livable and enjoyable in the long term and start connecting places that previously were not connected because we're a master plan community, right? That's how we were built out. So some key metrics that we're going to track, and Shayla mentioned there's an open data portal, which we'll send you guys a link to after the fact, that you'll be able to track some of these metrics. But public and private investment's a big thing. That's what we talk about a lot here in this board specifically. So we track, you know, the fund grant, any joint CIP project, the large development projects we do. What amount is the city putting in, whether it's, you know, 4B dollars, and then what is the private side actually putting in? We should be contributing, you know, a small portion compared to what the private side is putting in, but a lot of times we are needed to fill a gap. And so we want to make sure we're tracking what is the public input versus the private input. And then to Ruth's point, the population stabilizing, growing, you know, while we can't just pick up people and move them here ourselves, we want to make sure that we're watching. What is our population doing? Is it declining or is it going in the right direction? And if not, do we need to pivot? What do we need to be talking about? Then again, demographics, median age, is it stabilized or declining? Ideally, we want to see it start to go down a little bit. Our household income, is it stabilized or growing? That could go either way, right? Do we have the jobs here that are attracting people to come work that are of higher wages? I mean, you can read that in many ways. And then household size, stabilized or growing. Just around the world, people are having smaller families. You know, I think it's like 1.5 kids or something like that. And so what do the households need to look like for the generations to come? It may not be these larger single family homes. And so all of these metrics help us come to recommendations and decisions that we talk through with leadership to decide, you know, what path we need to go. And then there's one here that's not referenced that's really important, is the community engagement. We've got to get our community on board if we're going to make change and get them excited about what the future could be. And so we have a metric that we track how much community engagement that we do. You know, John and his group, they live at HOA meetings. And so we track that. And our goal is, I would say we're probably going to be forced to bump it up. We're at like thousands at this point this year, but that's a key part of what we do. Having conversations, talking to people, what do they want to see their community change to? We should be building a community for the people that are coming here and the people that are here now. And so we're really big on getting out in the community and talking.
So our major project, and our major projects and focus areas, so, again, just overall redevelopment planning and strategy. Our two key priority sites in the city are Imperial, which is the Highway 6 and Historic District, and then also Lake Point. Revitalization programs, so joint CIP, fund grant, great homes, outreach and relationship building, master planning, again, going to the planning side of things. And data and research, again, we're a data-driven organization. That is who we are, and it's who we're going to continue to be. And so what we're doing needs to be tracked and measurable, and making sure that we've got some data to back it. Growth management, that's more on like the development agreements, just there's a lot of things that we do that may not touch the board, but it's still important for you to understand, development agreements, asset management, there's, board management, there's a lot of things like that we do. And then land use implementation. How do we take the good work that was done in the land use plan and implement that throughout our city? And then going to board management again, as you guys know, 4B board, this is you guys, where your liaison is this department. And then we also oversee the TERSs. We have 3 TERSs, TERS 1, 3, and 4. So TERS 1 is here in Town Square. It's actually ending soon, next 2025. So again, you see what it was when it started and where it is now. And so this is an example of our P3s. The public-private partnerships are a big part of what we do, and will continue to do. And they've been pivotal for our city. This is, the highest grossing area in our city. So it's amazing to see the before and after and what has all changed since then. And then TERS 3 is Imperial, and it stretches from Highway 6 over to the Historic District. And then TERS 4 is around the Smart Financial Center and UH. And then just some success stories. You guys are very familiar. Again, public and private partnerships are something that Sugar Land is very known for. Town Square was our first one. And then, just because the TERS is ending next year, it doesn't stop though. That partnership is ongoing, it's continuous. And so we're already having conversations with the current owner about what's next for Town Square. What is the Town Square in 20 years? What does that look like? And so just because TERS's end or agreements end doesn't mean the relationship does. It's our department's job to make sure those relationships stay strong and we continue to make sure that they are successful. Smart Financial Center, obviously a huge P3 for us. Constellation Field is one of the now a AAA affiliate to the Astros. And then our joint CIP projects, again, John and his team worked great with Fund Grant. As you know, this was the Highlands project. It was an old pool that was turned into a beautiful playground. And again, this goes back to that private and public investment. What do we put in versus what is the private side putting in? But it's creating dividends for our community and turning spaces that were not utilized and underdeveloped into developed spaces. This is one of our favorites, the sidewalk in Sugar Creek. I think they're actually interested in potentially doing more. So it's been a really impactful improvement to their beautiful neighborhood, but they don't have sidewalks, right? So those little pleasures people don't have. We're trying to figure out how do we get people to be able to be mobile within our community. I think John added this because he loves his cowboy hat. It always ends up in the PowerPoints. I love it. The Sugar Creek Business Park again. So there was an old sign that'd been there forever, and they got a new sign, and they were super excited about it. And it made it more visible. It stands out a lot more. And then Great Homes. So Great Homes, again, doesn't impact this board directly, but because it comes out of the general fund, but it's a residential reinvestment program that's been pivotal. And to Shayla's point again, it's about being bold. This was a crazy idea that was thought of, and we have been trying it out for 2 years. The first year was around 145 homes participated in the program. We paid them around $400,000. We reimbursed back around $400,000. And I believe it was over 2 million in project costs that were actually done. So again, our portion of what we give versus what's being put back in our community, it speaks for itself, right? And so again, this is part of those metrics that we track. We're going to round out year 2, hopeful to start year 3. And then as we do it more and more, we'll find those trends and really figure out where are we missing people? How do we keep, there's plenty of homes in Sugar Land that we need to reach. So how do we continue to reach them? And this one was a Mayfield one. She didn't have a driveway, and she was floored that she got a new driveway. So it's those, those little things that make it really worth it. For me, when you see the impact that you can have on someone's life. Again, parks and placemaking is a big thing for SL4B because again, a key component of what this board can do is quality of life amenities. So Constellation Field, their reinvestment, once they became an affiliate with the Astros, they did some major improvements to the stadium. Down the bottom left are the parklets that we put out around COVID time. We were trying to get outdoor activations for people, get them out of the house. There was an agreement for them to only be up, I think, a year or two, and they're all still there. People still love them, and we haven't been asked to remove them yet, so I'll count that as a win. Rapport did some outside facade work and then some murals. The pump track just held its first championship tournament, went very well. And I'll put you back to Ruth.
So Jessica's been telling you about some success stories of what the work that's been done. I'm going to tell you about what I'm going to call future success, because this is work that hasn't been done yet. So where we are headed next in terms of long range planning for the city is getting into a new area we really haven't been involved in, and that's small area planning. So we have done a lot of long range planning on kind of the bigger scale, looking at the city as a whole. But what we want to do is kind of deep particular area to establish a vision and goals for redevelopment in those specific areas. And so our hope is to create some community focused plans that comprehensively consider things like existing market conditions and future feasibility, mobility opportunities and limitations, environmental assets, historic resources, and other things like that. So our first foray into small area plans will largely focus on the areas that were identified as regional and neighborhood activity centers in our 2018 land use plan. Some of you may or may not be familiar with that, but the map here on the left side of the screen highlights the regional activity centers in kind of that maroonish color, and then the neighborhood activity centers are in the pink. And so those are areas that have been identified for future redevelopment. So they are largely commercial areas, some have office, a lot of kind of strip retail that have opportunities. A lot of them have large parking lots where there's great opportunity to kind of do something different in those parking areas, maybe add some parking decks or structures, go vertical, and create some mixed use walkable places. And so we envision doing some small area plans for some of those areas. They will become an extension of the comprehensive plan, making recommendations on things like land use, mobility, placemaking, and other things that can improve the quality of life for Sugarlanders. We anticipate some of these potentially being funded out of the 4B. So that is one reason that we're having this conversation with you today. But also, we are working on kind of a somewhat of a small area plan, the Central Sugarland Livable Center study. So this is something that we are working alongside the Houston Galveston Area Council. So a significant amount of the funding came from them, actually from TxDOT through HGAC and then the city. And so this effort is looking at the Central Sugarland area. So it includes Lake Point, Town Square, and then quite a bit of residential going kind of further south on Highway 6. And this is an effort to improve connectivity and mobility and stimulate equitable economic development and just kind of generally create a better quality of life in these areas. So it's looking at understanding and addressing existing and future needs for mobility infrastructure, and also looking at housing and other kind of uses in the area. So at this point, this project was started late last year. We've created an existing conditions report, and our consultant is now working on preparing recommendations for future projects. So we anticipate those projects, including things like mobility improvements, placemaking enhancements, as well as potential policy or code changes, which again are all recommendations, projects that could come forward to the 4B for future funding requests in the future. So I think that's kind of the end of our presentation. So if you want to learn more about our department, the work that we're doing, you can go to this QR code or to the city's homepage, and I think we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Yes, sir.
The demographic information, are there other cities around the Houston area that we compare ourselves to that are kind of in the same situation we're in? Or?
Not really. I mean, we definitely look at the other cities. We keep a pulse on Missouri City, Richmond, Rosenberg, Pearland, League City. We really look at them all, but we're really in a unique situation in the Houston area because we are built out. Most of those cities are still growing. In terms of like Fort Bend County, we by far have the oldest population. Most of, Richmond, Rosenberg, the county unincorporated areas are much younger than Sugar Land as a whole. But most of those other cities still have room to grow. And so it kind of puts them in a different position. We are actively looking for other communities that we can kind of benchmark ourselves against. So if you know other communities in other states that you think are good comparisons, that you think are doing really cool, great things from a redevelopment standpoint, we'd love to hear about it. Because I haven't been to every state, every city, every state. So yeah.
I think Steve brings up a great point, and one that comes to mind is Plano.
Yeah, Plano's definitely one that we, right.
And they've been quite successful.
Yeah,
Yeah, we talked to Plano a lot about programs that they do, because it is similar. And again, redevelopment, it happens with every city, right? It's just, we're just there in our life cycle.
Yeah.
We're older, we're at a different stage in Richmond, Rosenberg, but everybody's gonna face it. And so we just want to make sure, in our city, that we continue to provide the quality of life that our residents desire, and then also prepare ourselves for our new residents, right? It's not a bad thing that we have an older demographic. It's something we need to be mindful of. And we need to make sure that when we do have the opportunity to build new housing, is it going to attract the demographic that we are needing to bring in, so we have that churn. And so it's just a point that we need to be keeping into consideration, so want to be clear there.
And on that demographic thing, I think it worked. We moved in our neighborhood 20 years ago,
Yeah.
all kids.
Yeah,
And now everybody's either out of college or in
Yeah.
college,
right.
with a very few exceptions.
Yep.
But there's gotta be a natural turn to that too, and I'm sure you've got the graph, as when a neighborhood like that starts turning over.
Ours is,
Right.
ours
Is
is turning over, because we
Yeah.
have now the younger families that come in, and so that, because we moved to our neighborhood 30 years ago,
Yeah.
and now it is redoing. So it is occurring. They all have young kids. I was just asking if our neighbor across the street, if they had the baby yet. But there's,
You get excited.
right. Just curious, is there ever any thought, and it may be with the city, would we ever acquire more like from another city?
So, that would be annexation.
Yes, that's what I'm
And
asking.
so I would say it would be unlikely that another city would give up land that they currently have in their jurisdiction. Generally speaking, the Texas legislature has significantly hindered our ability to annex new land into the city. We used to have a lot more authority to be able to do that, and now it essentially requires that a property owner approve of it or even request it. And so a lot of people aren't interested in paying taxes if they're, city taxes, if they're not paying city taxes today. So.
Funny you should mention, because the legislative session a couple sessions ago made it very difficult for cities to acquire land through annexation. But what I don't think this legislature knew was that they created a backdoor where a certain landowner could go into a different ETJ. So down south off of 2759, down past Greatwood, underneath Greatwood, there's a Pulte development, and they were in the city of Thompson's ETJ, and Thompsons are wonderful people, but it's a very small community and they don't have the resources. So they joined us, and so we'll be annexing, how many acres was that?
900.
900
acres. Yeah.
And we'll be getting our own Del Webb community, which will be in there that's not gonna bring the ages down any. But that'll be the whole donut, but it's gonna be new housing right around there.
I was gonna say, yeah, do they have other land, some
Yeah.
additional land that we can do stuff with?
The most
Yeah.
recent, yes, most recent. Well, and going back to the residential comment, that's what sprung Great Homes, right? We have an amazing community. We have 27 parks, but we have homes that just need a little love, especially when you can go to Richmond and Rosenberg and Fulshire and buy a new home. And so that was the thought behind Great Homes, of how do we get people to reinvest in their home? How do we encourage them to, incentivize them to hopefully attract maybe those younger families that are looking for something like that? And so that's what really kind of sprung that Great Homes idea, that thankfully council approved, and we've been trying out for 2 years now.
So, I would like to add, I always like to ask questions or make comments so that people that are watching that have these questions will have them answered. One of my questions that pops into my mind, and for you and I, it may be an obvious answer, but what difference does it make that our community's getting older, our population? So who cares, right?
Yeah.
Why do we need young people? That would be one of my questions as you process. The other statement maybe, as I deal with social media and people's comments, these plans are not about an individual. These plans are not about a single community within Sugar Land. These plans are about the city as a whole being healthy. And there will be some people that say, I don't want additional residents. I don't want that business. I don't want. Well, again, we are not planning for the individual. We are not planning for just Greatwood or just New Territory or just, we're planning for a city. And I think that needs to be said quite often because a lot of people start going, well, what about my plans? Well, you're an individual, which is great. Thanks for being a part of the team. But so going back to my original, so what, the median is up.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think that there's multiple answers. Yeah, one of them is that we just need to know who we're planning for, like who is in our community, who are we providing services to? Because one thing we've talked a lot about on my team in terms of an aging demographic is sometimes people can't drive anymore. So what does that mean for them if they are living in a single family home where you basically have to drive everywhere to get to your services? You know, how do we integrate places, new kinds of places where people could live, where they could walk more easily? Or how do we enhance mobility in those existing single family neighborhoods? And so it's about knowing who you're serving. But it also has long-term implications in terms of the city's finances, just very practically, as the number of people age into that 65 and over bracket, those homestead exemptions increase. And so that has a very direct impact on the city's budget. And so, you know, those are things that we have to just be thinking about and understanding that impact on us as an organization.
And to add, which I think is again why they put economic development and long-range planning together, because I think many people could answer it differently, but from economic development side, I mean, that's your jobs. That's the people that are going to work in your jobs one day, that are going to go to your schools. If you don't have kids filling up your elementary and your middle schools and your high schools, and we all know what happens when schools aren't full, you know, and we had a conversation, it bleeds into all of your retail churches. I mean, you need people shopping in our stores to be creating the revenue that's going to keep them open. And typically the demographic that has that buying power is a certain age bracket. So, you know, Devin always says, like, we need to have, like, diversify our banking, our portfolio. It's the same with our people. We need to have a good balance of everything. We shouldn't be heavy on young. We shouldn't be heavy on medium or heavy on the older side. We need to have a good balance so we have a constant churn. We need people moving out of their single family homes into smaller homes, so then we can have families be coming in. So I think you make a great point, because I think a lot of people, when they hear redevelopment or change, it's like, well, what about me? Where's my place? Everybody has a place. And that's why it's important that we talk with our community and bring them along, because it's about, if it's not about you, it's about your grandchild or your neighbor's baby that was just born. Like, we all need to make sure this community is available for whoever that is. And, you know, what are we doing to ready ourselves for the future so we don't become not desirable? I mean, that's definitely not what Sugar Land's known for. And we do not want that to ever become the case. So I'm sure people could give other answers too as to why.
No, that was
I could
absolutely
keep going
perfect.
probably.
I wanted to, because of all the meetings that we sit in, and by the way, I'm not yet 65. Okay, so with that said, I'm not too far from I'm not picking on anybody, but what I feel like I miss, if this were about William, I miss some of the great new retail, great new entertainment and restaurants that we could have if we did cater to a younger, higher income earner that could come here and bring new things. And so as I look around our city, and I do see areas that frustrate me, like we all do, where I'm like, why won't this redevelop, right? And I feel like if we brought a younger uh, resident to our community. I'm not saying all young,
Yeah.
but if we brought a younger resident, I think we would get more entertainment, more food, more everything that we may be lacking. And from time to time, we may drive to Katy or Houston or wherever for, and I want to keep them here. So,
Yeah,
thank you.
every retailer has a target demographic, and so when they look at our city, which many do every day, they're gonna look at where they wanna go, how many homes are around it, how many cars drive by it, what's the buying power of those people around it, and if it doesn't math, and there's only so much that we can do incentive wise to bring them here, because we're not going to pay somebody to come here, right? We need to be doing other things to get people here and then fill in gaps where it's appropriate. But
Yeah, thank you.
Well, what I really enjoy though is over the last 2 years, it's very consistent when I talk to anybody in the city government about this revitalization, redevelopment. So you guys are on it,
thank you.
which is
We're trying.
fantastic.
We're telling anyone that will listen, and we ask that you do as well. Tell your neighbors. That's right. That's right. So we
All
appreciate
right,
it.
thank
It's
you.
gonna take
Any
all of
other
us.
questions?
Awesome. Well, thank you all for your
Thank
time.
you.
All right, we'll move on to the director's report. With Devin.
Great, thank you. Special thank you to Jessica and Ruth. That was excellent. You guys did a great job. So I just have a quick director's report. We like to do this to kind of just keep you guys updated on what has been the happenings between our department, economic development and tourism. So we'll get started. So on the business development side, some of our business development staff, Alba and Jennifer, attended the bio conference in San Diego. Life sciences was a big focus of our latest targeted industry study that we did, finished up a couple of years ago. And it actually went with our regional partners, so all over Greater Houston, and had a great representation there. The Sugarland, or I'm reading my, City Council approved a 12-month ground lease between the city and a Finnish company on a potential natural gas power plant. So you may have seen that in the news a little bit. So right there, Sugarland leaders want a developer to build a rapid start natural gas power plant. This has been an important component as part of our life sciences strategy, because consistency with our power and what we've experienced in the last few years in terms of the power grid. And so Alba has been very active in how do we solve for that problem so that we can continue to be successful in attracting life sciences companies here. And then you'll also see on a few of these slides, some of our summer interns that have started and that will be helping out the different teams as I go along. So on the marketing and tourism side, they are always busy. There was the JJ Watt Charity Classic at the Constellation Field. We also have been hosting some groups in our city suite over at Constellation Field. This was the hotel training program. Did anybody attend the Bizarre Food and Wine Festival that was happening in Sugarland Town Square? It was the first time that they did it. They have been doing some of these larger, really regional draw type special events. And so this Food and Wine Festival was one of them. They had a lots of different Houston area chefs that came. I heard there was a pig on a spit and everything like that. It was a great turnout. Lots of folks that came down to Sugarland Town Square that maybe hadn't experienced it before. And then our Sugarland Visit Sugarland has a store online now that you can go and buy your own swag if you would like to. So the Sugarland Sweet East Shop, hopefully I got that right. All right. And then some of our community development updates from our community development team. I don't like saying this part, but I presented on a panel. I did fine. So myself, it was a big group of people. There was about over 100 folks from the Houston Women's Commercial Group that Don Jansen and I presented on. So he covered a lot about public-private partnerships from his past experience with helping with the development of Town Square. And I covered kind of the general of some of what you kind of just heard in our presentation. We have updated on the city website. The Community Planning and Redevelopment has their own page now on the city website as this new department. So reflecting a lot of all the good things that you've heard about today. fund grant. You've seen already some great outcomes of what has happened this year. But we are going to be getting this link out to you after this meeting that for Edgewater, right? Lakes of Edgewater. They put in some bike lanes. This was in partnership with our engineering department and the fund grant. And our team did a great interview video showcasing of what has been completed. And so we will be getting that video out to you guys so that you can see it as well. But it's been a great representation of that success. Again, some more hostings that we've been doing of building those relationships with our HOA representatives. And then some of the great homes, you've seen some of those before and after, and more of our great interns. So between all of our groups, we have 4 interns this summer. They are all awesome. And hopefully they're learning a lot and we're learning a lot from them as well. And so it's going to be a really good summer around here. And I think that is it. So I want to thank you all and we'll look forward to seeing you next month.
Questions?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Meeting adjourned at 4:50. Yeah. Thanks. Great job today.
Thanks, yeah, really good.
Very good.